Is the Israeli offensive stalling out, and are they starting to take casualties? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's November 1st, 2023. This is your daily unbiased Israel-Hamas update. Let's get into it. Okay, we have some interesting updates. Now, first off, you can see here, this is our map of northern Gaza, and we're going to be focusing on this map for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, in the central part of Gaza, this is where I hypothesized that Israel was trying to cut off northern Gaza from the remaining parts of the south. And you can see this effort has been continuing onward. Israel is again focusing on avoiding big urban areas where the fighting is going to be really difficult for them. You can see yesterday they sort of stopped and paused here at this north-south roadway, but now they're continuing to drive. As we talked about, they need to cut off this second roadway, the second thoroughfare that's allowing Hamas personnel and equipment to pass north to south. So they're driving here, and you can see how heavy the fighting is. With at least 5 different reports of Israeli military movements in the area. But again, the biggest takeaway here is you can see that relative to the density to the north and relative to the density in Nusayrat and Borij, I apologize. I'm trying my best to do pronunciations here, but I don't speak. I speak English and sometimes a little Spanish. So that's all. Those are the only correct pronunciations you're getting out of me. But they are trying to avoid these dense urban areas where Hamas is going to be there at their most effective. So they're going to try to cut off this northern part of Gaza, right? They're going to use the fence on this side and the sea on the other, and hopefully try to get control of this region here. Now, the tough part is, of course, Hamas very publicly has said we make an absolutely eye-watering amount of tunnels underneath Gaza. So the Israelis not just have to go across Gaza, but they have to go under as well. And that's going to be the challenge ahead of them, is to detect all the tunnels that run under this region. Now, I suspect that once they control it, they're going to have to boot out a bunch of civilians. They probably have methods to detect if the ground underneath them contains these tunnels or not. And then it's just a matter of sweeping this area and cutting off or disrupting or destroying the tunnels underneath them. So that's the objective here. What I thought was interesting, you also see, right, this objective here, as we discussed, that I think this is going to likely become a sort of forward operating base. And you can see the Israelis deliberately avoiding some of these heavier urban areas. But here's what's bizarre, is that there's a bunch of fighting taking place here. And this sort of surprises me. I really thought that you were going to see the Israelis establish a forward operating base before pushing hard into this urban area. But you can see they're already kind of in it, right? These are pretty dense urban blocks here. And you can see there's reports as of 6 hours ago that the clashes here are pretty intense with Israeli military vehicles, right, operating in this vicinity here. And of course, there's also, right, Israeli vehicles being targeted. A number of vehicles here, right? They're saying homemade mortar shells, that sort of thing. So I think this is honestly, to me, in my assessment, might be a little aggressive. I think they're going into the lion's den, so to speak. This is where Hamas is going to be best prepared. I also point this out because we've talked about also this incursion here in the northeast. And what's troubling about this incursion is you can see the Israeli forces operating very freely around Beit Hanun, but the fighting here is pretty heavy. It says there have been more than 3 hours of clashes, and it's not clear that the Israeli forces are going to be able to necessarily take the town. The town itself probably going to be a stronghold, and this is maybe why they're trying to surround it here in this corner. But again, I think that Hamas has had months and months to prepare for this conflict, right? When they launched their terror attack on October 7th, they knew that the Israeli response would be a ground invasion into Gaza. That wasn't really up for debate. And so given that Hamas knew this ground invasion was coming months ago, what is an extra day, an extra 2 days, an extra 5 days to take these corners, establish them into meaningful forward operating bases, right? Establish your troops here All right, I would say definitely cutting off this North Gaza from the remainder of Gaza is an important part of the operation. But these other areas, I think, should become forward operating bases, and there should be a recognition among the Israelis that this is just going to be a hard fight. The remainder of these urban areas, Biat Hanun is going to be brutal, and we're seeing it, right? You can see that the Israelis, while there's some reports that they've maybe seized some of these blocks here, they're struggling to actually take the town itself. And I'll be very curious to see if they claim to possess this town in the next couple of days. You can see here again, they haven't taken Biat Hanun. They haven't taken this central area here. They're making, I think, the best progress we've seen is this central Gazan axis here. But you can just see that the real work is still very much ahead of them. And it's not clear that they've recognized that this is not going to be a 90-day operation, right? Clearing these towns, this level of urbanization, it's going to be a lot of work. So they should get in here, establish some major fobs, and begin the slow process of clearing these regions out, if that's really the objective they want to achieve. When we look to the south, you can see the Israelis are not actually leaving the south alone. Israeli forces are also pushing into this town of Abbasan. They're also pushing into Al-Qarada. So it's again remains unclear to me if there is a meta objective here. The Israelis clearly going all out along a number of axes, but you're still sort of left with this question of what is the long-term plan here? It's not clear, and how effective is Hamas's actual resistance, right? Because I point this out because, again, there were several fighters that the Qassam brigades are reporting have been KIA'd in an Israeli strike, but the Israeli soldiers, right, there have been reports that 9 soldiers were KIA in this morning in a battle in northern Gaza. Now, bear in mind, in Iraq and Afghanistan, 9 U.S. soldiers being KIA in a single day was like the highest casualties you saw at the height of the war. So it's a little troubling to see those kind of numbers put up already because, again, Hamas, I don't think the major fighting has started yet. I think this is still firmly in the preparatory phase. Right? And the Israelis are starting to admit it. The spokesman, Rear Admiral Hagari, said fighting the Gaza Strip is becoming more complex as troops get deeper into Hamas-run territory. He says, quote, "This is complex face-to-face combat. In the fierce battles that took place today, we lost troops." End quote. He said 2 Jihadi soldiers were killed today, died bravely in battle as troops worked to capture a Hamas stronghold in Jabalia. And Jabalia, again, this region here, which almost seems like the Israelis, again, I think they're going too far too fast. I think this is already starting to look more and more like a disaster, right? If we have at least 2 soldiers confirmed KIA here, another 9 confirmed KIA in this missile strike, you're talking already about dozens of Israeli soldiers who have been KIA in this conflict. And that's, we don't have the Hamas. Hamas is not public, and I wouldn't trust their casualty numbers, but Israel's got to be more transparent because they're just a little more public about the names and identities of soldiers who are KIA. So it's a little harder to fudge the numbers. Also worth pointing out, of course, the Qassam Brigade's targeting Tel Aviv, a civilian center with rockets and missiles, which is, not effective. If you have rockets and missiles, you should use them to support your troops that are currently in engagements with the Israeli military, who's at your doorstep, not target civilians. That's my opinion for both sides. Anyway, that's really all I had for you guys. Significant updates. We're really starting to see the Israeli strategy here at work. The question is, will it be any good? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to hit like and subscribe. And if you want to check out my analysis of the footage that Israel released of air infantry operations on day 1, that has dropped yesterday on combatvetnews.com. This is my version of Patreon, where I can do analysis of some of the combat footage that YouTube won't let me show you. So if you want to support the channel, keep me independent, any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the members only content. And thanks to everybody that supports me on there. All right, see you in the next one. Cheers.